This book caught my eye based on the title alone. We all have faced the spiraling effect of worrying about something in the future. Maybe there's a test that you're studying for, or an important event where you need to be on top of your game. You feel a sense of anxiety that follows you around as you think of all the things that could go wrong. Alternatively, you may be concerned over something that has already happened. You worry over things you should have said and mistakes that you made. Either way, worrying about the future or the past means that you're not enjoying the present. Many of us warriors out there are fully aware of the fact that we're worrying, but that doesn't really help us. Over time, it can become a gut reaction that's more difficult to control. I thought that this book could be a game changer if it outlines how to be more focused on the present, and it definitely offers some solid advice on how to do that. It's written by Dale Carnegie. This is another popular name in the self-help world. While this book isn't his most famous, his name alone is, and it might ring a bell to you. He was a writer and a lecturer, and he definitely made his mark. A personal favorite tidbit that helps us stifle the worrying habit is living in airtight compartments. He compares this to a boat that has airtight compartments, and this assists in the event that it should capsize. Each compartment acts as a single day. All you have to do is wake up and focus on the day ahead of you. Don't think of tomorrow. That's another compartment that you will get to. Do your best today. Achieve all that you can in the next 24 hours and don't think further than that. This helps us in times of uncertainty. The COVID-19 pandemic is a great example. Many of what we have dealt with since 2020 has been a first for all of us. We don't know what life will look like a year from now or even a month, but that's not something that you have to spend time worrying about. Focus on today and only today. If you take too much time to ponder the future, you'll get overwhelmed, and any person would. If you can put one foot in front of the other, the journey seems less daunting. If it's just about the immediate task, it's more manageable, and you feel that you can do it. A quote from another book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse, explains this perfectly. It reminded me of this book and this quote when reading about daytime compartments. "I can't see a way through," said the boy. "Can you see the next step?" "Yes." "Just take that," said the horse. Another helpful tip, if there's something specific on your mind, is to ask yourself, what is the worst that can happen? Maybe you're having nervous thoughts about an upcoming test. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen if you maybe don't do well on this test? Will you go to jail? Would it cause you or somebody else injury? Even just looking at it this way, the worst possibility in your situation is not as bad, or probably not as bad, as the two I've listed above. Take a moment to prepare to accept this worst case scenario if you have to. The problem with worrying is that we don't want to face the worst case scenario, but this sense of avoidance makes the worry a bigger deal than it needs to be, and you can never handle something that you're not fully aware of. From here, calmly proceed to improve on the worst. We don't want the worst case scenario to happen. That's not why we prepare for it. The point is to be aware, face the dragon, and get going on how to make sure it doesn't pop up. If you're worrying about failing your test, you're not studying. If you understand that you could fail and you may have to retake a subject, you can put that aside and work hard to prevent that from happening. A useful rule to follow is to crowd worry out of your mind by keeping busy. Plenty of action is one of the best therapies ever devised for curing a worry part like myself. Have you ever noticed that when you're very focused on an activity, it's difficult to worry about anything? It's necessary to differentiate between some activities here. Something like watching TV is very passive because you're not actually doing anything. Therefore, you may still worry. Something like playing a board game is not passive because you have to think. So, can you think of, and you can journal this or just list any other activity that is not passive, that allows you to forget your worries? Maybe there are activities that you enjoy doing. If you feel that your mind is bustling and it seems to be controlling you, find an activity that you have to focus on. You could do a craft or read a book. My favorite thing to do when I feel myself worrying needlessly is cleaning. It makes me feel good knowing that my space is clean, and I also can't help but focus on the task at hand. Two birds with one stone. We don't want to do this to the extent of burnout, but you could even spend a bit more time working on some project or some type of task when your mind is racing with worries. If you feel useful and constructive, your worries may just dissipate. Another rule that the author shares with us is don't fuss about trifles. Don't permit little things, the mere termites of life, to ruin your happiness. To explain this further, we are so capable of overcoming great obstacles. We have all faced difficult or even traumatic situations. For example, someone could face the devastating reality of a natural disaster like a flood that may destroy all of their belongings. Although this is an objectively horrifying experience, people tend to put one foot in front of the other and see how they can improve upon the worst. Hopefully, none of you have faced something so terrifying, but nevertheless, we have all had our own personal disasters to deal with, and we've made it out alive. Not just that, we may have become wiser and more adept at dealing with challenges. It becomes interesting to note that we are fully aware of our capability to deal with something catastrophic, and yet, in most cases, it's not that event that causes the greatest worries, but tiny inconveniences in our day-to-day lives. If you ever find yourself getting overly concerned about something that's not really catastrophic, ask yourself, will this matter in 6 months? And if not, do your best to let it go. This is my favorite ailment for worry. I find that it's indeed a cure for worry, but also a way to make the world a better place. The author puts it this way: get rid of your worries by helping others. When I meet a man on the street with a beautiful dog, I always comment on the dog's beauty. As I walk on and glance over my shoulder, I frequently see the man petting and admiring the dog. My appreciation has renewed his appreciation. This is a simple example, but it does illustrate the point well. When we help someone else, our focus is no longer on ourselves and the things that are concerning us. We have to be present with another person in order to help them. At the same time, by doing something selfless, you are creating a spark of joy that could spread further than you imagine. You don't even have to save this for when you feel worried. Make it a habit. Forget yourself by becoming interested in others. Do a good deed every day that will put a smile on someone's face. When you help people, your perspective of the world changes. You see that everyone has struggles, and in some cases, more so than you. This transforms worry into gratitude. Next, I want to share with you some good working habits to prevent fatigue and worry. The first one is clear your desk of all papers except those relating to the immediate problem at hand. If our desk or the area where we work is a mess, our thoughts often reflect it too. Having a multitude of papers lying around or numerous tabs open on your laptop makes you feel chaotic. Whatever is on your desk or open on your browser should only be the thing that you're working on at this very moment. The next habit that helps us is when you face a problem, solve it, then and there. If you have the facts necessary to make a decision, then do it. Don't keep putting off decisions. If you get a project that you need to complete, get started immediately. You'll beat procrastination and it will not cause strain on your to-do list. I found this to be true in my own life. A lot of my academic success can be owed to the fact that I just get going. I didn't wait for a teacher or lecturer to tell me what to do or how to do it. I simply got started. In any endeavor, there's usually a way that you can make a start or a way to prepare. Our worries usually seem very overwhelming. I'll definitely attest to the fact that each new worry I have feels like the end of the world. And yet the worry before the newest one actually wasn't that bad. Although we are more aware of the state of the world, we are in a far more comfortable place before technology was in our lives. The author put it perfectly when he said the pages of history fairly shriek with tragic tales of famine, poverty, pestilence, and man's inhumanity to man. After reading history for an hour, he realizes that as bad as conditions are now, they're infinitely better than they used to be. This enables him to see and face his present troubles in their proper perspective, as well as to realize that the world as a whole is constantly growing better. On that note, you can journal or just simply think about a few things that you are grateful for that have come about as a result of improved technology, whatever it can be. It's all in the way that you choose to look at it. Things could always be worse, and you don't have to see that as a bleak statement, but rather one that's uplifting. You will get through whatever is worrying you either way, and there's no point in putting yourself through mental torture. Moving on, remember that sometimes you have no control over what you are worrying about. Things like the weather, the state of the economy, and many other things are simply out of our hands. Let's try not to worry over something that we can't change. Cooperate with the inevitable. If you know a circumstance is beyond your power to change or revise, say to yourself, it is so, it cannot be otherwise. If we stop trying to fight what we can't change, we may have more energy left to improve upon the situation. We can't control it, but we can make the best of it. Alternatively, some of our worries are within our control. There's something we can do to better our situation, but we may just be avoiding it. In these situations, simply sit down and face the facts. Rather devote precious energy to solving your problems than worrying about them. If you look at it this way, your worries simply become tasks. We can do this by considering whether or not we have any control over whatever is causing us stress. For example, if we are stressed about arriving on time for something important, we can plan to leave very early rather than sitting around and imagining the worst. As much as I enjoyed this book and I found many helpful tips to keep in the back of my mind, there was just an elephant in the room that I could not ignore. I will say that this book was published in 1948, and unfortunately, it wasn't necessarily ahead of its time. If you feel particularly triggered by sexism or stereotypes in general, then I would not recommend that you read the book. However, for me, I found that I could note some serious pitfalls while expressing gratitude for helpful lessons that I've learned. But I found that it could serve a purpose if I let it. However, I didn't want to ignore those pitfalls, so I thought it was worth mentioning. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening, and please leave any thoughts or comments down below.